right. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. It's Judith Briles, and we have another really different type of episode today for you on the Author You, Your Guide to Book Publishing podcast. And as I start every show, I'm always looking through, picking up randomly something from my little book, The Snappy, Sassy, Salty Success for Authors and Writers. So within it, there is 400 quotes and to make you go. And they're divided into sections from author and writer juice to failure is not an option, by the way, inspiration, joy, and your muse. So I think I'm going to just kind of randomly open that section and we'll just go with this one. Often when change arrives, it isn't easy to recognize its entrance, but once here, it's impossible to ignore. When you are writing, when you're in the middle of it, when you're book marketing, when you're doing any of the elements involved with publishing, that change does creep in all the time, just because the whole industry has changed dramatically in the last 2 decades, dramatically, as well as your own attitudes, your own experiences, what's happening, and what you thought you were going to write, you may end up not writing. It's taken a whole new direction. So, you can't ignore it because that's the way it is. What we're going to be doing today is we have someone who's going to show you the elements of how to thrive in your writing and in the publishing to come. And with us is Laura Belsten. She is the founder, she's the president of the CEO Partnership. She also has deal for those of you who are seeing the video part of this, that you can download. I want to give everyone the whole goodie, the whole enchilada to it from her website where you can pull it from, and it's called the Center for Thriving Leadership.com. The Center for Thriving Leadership.com. And there's just a little about Laura. She has been coaching high-end executives for decades. She is a past president of the International Coach Federation. She serves on the faculty of the Graduate School of Banking and Coach Training Alliance, and she's been teaching graduate courses for almost 2 decades at the University of Denver. So Dr. Laura is someone who is a force to reckon with. She's savvy. She's got intuitive ideas. She's totally tied into the emotional and social intelligence in your writing, and currently the positivity, the psychology of positivity. So we're going to kiss on all of those things today. Laura, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Judith. It's so wonderful to be here. Thanks for inviting me. This is
I know
fun.
we're gonna have fun. Yeah,
Yeah.
we're gonna have fun. So and Laura also, wait a minute, got to tell you, she's working on a book. She's just like many of you. She's the aspiring author to be, but the title of the book is called Thrive: How to Flourish in Today's Business Chaos. And I think, it's workplace chaos, it's living chaos. I think there's so many convoluted and extreme confusion out here, globally for many,
Mhm.
that thriving almost seems like an impossibility. And maybe just a little kiss of positive psychology, it may be hopeful for you. So, Laura, let's jump in.
Thanks. Yeah, that sounds good.
So what is positive psychology?
Oh, this is one of my favorite topics.
Aha.
Um, Positive psychology is a newer branch of psychology. When most people think of psychology, down through since it was invented, I don't know, 150, 200 years ago with Freud
Mhm.
and all that, the study has been mostly on mental illness, on what's wrong with people.
Yep.
And it's less than 3 decades ago, we started saying what we need to be focused on is what's right with people. Rather than studying mental illness, we should study what makes people thrive and flourish and find that sense of well being. So it's all about what makes life worth living. It's about strengths, rather than deficiencies, it's about strengths. It's, a kind of the scientific study of positive functioning and the good life.
Mhm.
You know, if you can think of this as on a continuum, if you will. On
Mhm.
the far left side, you've got a
Okay.
-10. On the far right side, you've got a +10. And in the middle, you got a 0. That far left, -10 is like real severe mental illness, maybe schizophrenia, borderline personality disorder. And there's a very important function that psychology plays and has played for 150 years, and that is to help folks get from that far left end farther to the middle. At the far right end, where we haven't been putting a lot of focus until more recently, is truly flourishing, thriving, and that sense of well-being. So that +10 is thriving, flourishing, and well-being. That 0 in the middle has been identified as kind of languishing, that just kind of surviving, head down, getting by. Life is whisking us along, and we're not being intentional enough about how we live that life. Just to the left
Hmm.
of that 0 might be a lesser, it's depression or anxiety. And what psychology has traditionally done is try to get people to 0. And what they call that sometimes is the disease model. It's kind of the same in healthcare. If you don't have cancer, it doesn't necessarily mean you're really super healthy. You might be, just, you
Mhm.
might not be super healthy. You might be having trouble getting up the stairs or something like that. You know?
Well, when I had three knee replacements within, with, within 3 months of each other, I couldn't
Oh,
get up the stairs.
and,
But, but,
and
but
yeah, you don't
I'm
feel super healthy. So the same is
no,
true, in,
no.
in positive psychology, and what we're trying to do is help people move along that continuum from surviving to thriving.
Okay, so I'm loving this because, as you know, when you were saying this, I wrote down -10, a 0, and a +10, and that where you're the 0, to me, I wrote the word limp. You're limping along.
Yes.
So,
Uh-huh.
I'm listening here. But that I think this really does tie to writing and publishing and book marketing and everything that the author goes through on it. Because that to get thrown into creeping toward, past the 0 to the minus side are rejections, or it doesn't
Oh,
work, or
yeah.
people don't show up, or then no one comes to my book signing. It's like when I'm going to be teaching in class on the Publishing at Sea cruise that will be rolling out in February with 25 authors. And I'm going to be teaching a class on how to engage people in a bookstore. So
Mhm.
you aren't in that limp along, maybe you're going to sell 4 to 6 books, people to move all the way across where now you're really rocking, you're connecting, and people want you to sign books, and you're taking them away. And there are tools that you can grow with, skills you can acquire to make that happen. And so that's the positive side on that. But that when author rejection happens, it happens. Let me tell you, we all get rejected. Every one of you are going to get rejected, not once, not twice. Hey, but you know what? You can get out a deck of cards. It's going to happen, and all that. But there is the connection, and it comes with patience and persistence in that. So that goes patience, persistence, positive. Kind of like that, Laura.
Oh, there you go. Well,
But I
and
like
people
that the way that
gravitate. I'm
Mhm.
sorry, Judith. People gravitate to positive.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely. Um, it's what I call the good juju.
there you go.
That I don't like to be around negative juju. I don't want to be around people who are negative, or
Mhm.
environments that are negative or make me feel creepy,
Mhm.
or or don't feel welcoming
Absolutely.
on that. And yet people, this is why, well, I think one of the therapy issues, people stay stuck. They've been moved to the 0 and they think that it's a win, maybe.
And it is, I mean, there's a very real role for traditional psychology for sure.
Hmm.
It's really necessary. Adversity creeps into everybody's life.
Of
And,
course.
and one of the things about positive psychology, we really need to make a distinction between that and, uh, unbridled, forced optimism, if you will.
Hmm.
It's not about, I mean, in fact, we have a name for that called toxic positivity, when people feel forced to put on a happy face all the time, or, the platitudes, this too will pass. And, that doesn't help. We have to acknowledge that, life can be difficult sometimes. Yeah, you might
Hmm.
have a tough book signing. You might have, 25 rejections. My goodness. And, that's where resilience comes in, which is one of the tools of
Hmm.
positive
Hmm.
psychology. But
Hmm.
it's so important to be mindful of the fact that, we're not going to live at that plus 10 all the time. And, we might be somewhere around 2 or 3 some days and 6 or 7 other days. And we might drop down into a -1 or a -2. Um,
Hmm.
but we can live intentionally. And that's what's important.
Hmm. Hmm. And what's going on around you? And it could be politics, it could be in the news, it could be personal things. I had a good friend, a client, die a couple of weeks ago, and
So sorry.
someone and when she went in for her chemo, we would have our chemo hour together. A lot of times there's several of us that she kept her cancer close in. Not everyone knew it. And so there was kind of a rotation that when she was in it, that I would have, my day, I'd have my tea ready and that, and it was just Marcia time. And we'd laugh, we'd be silly, I mean, all kinds of things while she was getting injected.
Mm,
Um, with that. And it was really, and I knew it was coming. I mean, absolutely, it was like imminent at
mm.
finally point. She said, enough is enough. And I certainly understood it. The thing is, she just came out with her book this
How
week,
wonderful.
her last book with her co-partners and going through it and I was so thrilled to have it in my hands that I'll always have a little bit more of her as we go on. People are saying, why aren't you really talking about this? I mean, you haven't announced it to others. And I said, I told my coaching group because they knew she was part of it and they knew, but I wasn't. I'm going to write up a salute to her on
Oh,
what she did this next week. But it's just sometimes you just have to live with that when you get
yeah.
pulled down
Hmm.
and work through how you want to handle it and move through. At least that's and everyone does handle this stuff differently. I
Yes,
certainly get that. Certainly get that. Not sure
absolutely.
why I went down that track, but anyway, positive psychology. So I think that sounds it. I think it sounds kind of like the way it should be. Um, but how many people in the field of psychology? It's interesting. I'm going to open up this dialogue with my grandson, who's this is what his major is. This is where he's going. Um, um, believe that. How many of the professionals really go down that path?
Wow. I think more and more will
Yeah.
start to. Uh,
Mhm.
I mean, but however, right now, I think most of the practitioners in the field are more focusing on helping people out of the negative end of the
Mhm.
continuum into functioning. And I think more and more will start to. I have no idea percentages. I really don't. And it's only been
Mm.
fairly recently that universities are starting to train people in this field of positive psychology. There's a lot of research that's going on. There's a lot of scientific, evidence-based research that informs us on how we can take steps to move in the direction of that positive end of the continuum.
Well, that also has to bring some of the balance issues in. I mean, like well-being. It just
Yes.
seems to me, we actually did have a show coming up on memoir writing, and the person who wrote it had a really not a nice blood cancer, and going through it, and my world's coming to an end, everything's going to hell
Mm.
in a handbasket. And he really took that positive. That was really what he was practicing and going along, and he's feeling great now.
Mm.
He's writing again, he's back to work again, he's doing a lot of things about the choices we make.
I love that you said that. I mean, because
Okay.
so much of this is a choice. And in fact, positive emotions, if you're thriving, you're experiencing more positive emotions.
Mhm,
To some degree, positive emotions are a choice. To some degree. I mean, life circumstances notwithstanding. I mean, things happen. And
mhm,
yet, we can choose to focus on what's wrong. We can ruminate, that's a psychological term, where we just focus so much that we spiral downward and can even spiral downward into depression by focusing
mhm,
on what's wrong. Or we can take a look, we can take a step back, and we can say, this is my whole life. There are some things here that are going right.
mhm,
And, there are tools that we're starting to use, and probably everybody who's listening to this has probably heard of a gratitude journal. And the science suggests that when people start to look for what they're grateful for in life, I mean, you walk into despite everything that's going on in the world, you can still walk into a grocery store and there's fresh fruits and vegetables from all over the world. I mean, 100 years ago, you ate whatever you dig up out of your garden. I mean, that's something to be grateful for. A hot shower in the morning. I mean, again, 100 years ago, 150 years ago, people were hauling water here in, Colorado in the West, and it wasn't warm and it had to be heated up. And, I mean, and if what the science suggests is if we say, what, let me just jot down a few things today that I'm grateful for. We start to going forward look
mhm,
for those things. And so that's a choice. We can choose to focus on the negative and spiral down, or we can choose to say, there's some good here too. And even if it's small, and it will lift us up and allow us to go forward to find other positive things. And what the research shows is that people who are thriving and
mhm,
flourishing
mhm,
spend more of their time thinking about what's positive rather than thinking about what's negative, and that's a choice.
mhm. I love it that you said sometimes it's the little things,
Mm-hmm.
um, and that is. I mean, I had an experience just before you and I got on to start doing this, that someone said, I have to fill in. My husband needs caregiving, and that there's a whole sheet that has to be done every month that gets turned in to the powers to be. And um, it's so consistent. And she said to me, and it was like Eureka. And she said, you're what you have to do in your reporting is absolutely so consistent every month with him. Why don't you just get it in a week or two early? Because we're fine with you in taking care of him. If you just, get your side in, if any oddball things, you can always change it. And it was like, I don't have to wait until the 30th to turn these things in. So his care is on the continuum.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I mean, it's like, thank you.
See, that's exactly what we're talking about here, Judith. That little, and actually, there's an expansion on this gratitude journal idea,
Okay.
and we call it GLAD. So GLAD. So every day, writing down, what you're grateful for. That's the G.
Mhm.
Every day, writing down. The L stands for learn. What did I learn today?
I love the L.
Yeah.
Yep.
The A stands for what did I accomplish today? Because we are all in that situation where we have to-do lists that are, two, three,
Up the
5 pages
gazoo.
long. Yeah.
Mm.
And so at the end of the day, we look at what we've crossed off, and it's only like, three or four, maybe five things, and
Yep.
and we get down on ourselves. But
Mm.
let's look at what did I accomplish? What did I get done? So
Mhm.
gratitude, what did I learn? What did I accomplish? And D is kind of the joy factor. What delighted me today?
Love it.
Whether it's that sunrise, whether it's, watching a bird pecking around, looking, on the ground for worms or
Oh, I
whatever.
love that. Okay, that's being it for me. That ties into there are times you just need to be in the moment. Just stop
Yes,
everything and
yes,
just be in the moment. So
yes,
sometimes it's sometimes when it's like I have a really hot mug of tea, it's just
yes.
wrapping my hands around because I have arthritis,
Mm-hmm.
really, bad, and just wrapping my hands around and feeling the warmth coming through, and it's just like, okay, we can keep going. All right. So,
And
so
another thing that I love what you're saying, because a part of it
mm,
is also savoring,
yes.
savoring that moment and
Hmm.
just spending a moment and savoring it. Or
Hmm.
savoring, I love these pop-ups that you get, like on Facebook or on some of, I don't remember even where they all come from. Some, I guess they're just my memories in my photo album.
They're all over the place, though.
They're all over,
Pop-ups.
and so they pop up and you get to smile,
Yeah.
at a child or a grandchild
Mm.
or a loved one, and it brings and just take a moment and savor that. Brings, these are what they call micro moments of positivity. We're not living a happy life constantly. It's impossible. But there are micro moments, and we can choose to put our focus there, rather than on all the stuff that's going on in the world that will just drag us down.
Whatever it is. But I love
Whatever it is.
micro, whatever it is, and in fact, you mentioned joy when you moved into the word delight. On my island, going into my kitchen, I have a little thing that hangs, and I will change and maybe scribble some colors on it or whatever. And actually, I wrote just joy to you, just
Yeah.
joy to
Hmm.
you,
Hmm.
to whoever it is. So whoever is in there, they're looking at it. When John has the fellows that come over on Tuesday and they have wine or they just to be with him for an hour or so. But so they're pouring their wine, they're getting it, they devour Cheetos. Oh my God, these boys are Cheeto eaters. And so and I always have a bowl basket of Cheetos for always because and then I just wrote up joy to you for all of them. So,
I love it. I
it
love that you do that. That's
yeah,
fantastic.
it's it may seem silly, but it's those going back to what Laura said. It's the micro moments sometimes that when they come in will be the thing that might catapult you out of some dingy thing that's just been black cloud
Hmm.
um, over you. And we just all need that. So well-being. I know Laura's about well-being, optimizing well-being and going on. So bringing it back to all of you in your authoring. Look at authoring's a lonely number. Sometimes you're so isolated. Sometimes things you're so myopically involved in what you're trying to do that you don't hear the outside noise. You don't hear the outside music.
Mm.
Um,
Hmm.
and sometimes you just need to step out and just and go do something else to give yourself a break. But I also understand when you're in a riding blitz that to keep going because when when the good juju hits, I don't want anyone to say, "Oh my God, it's 5 o'clock. I have to stop." You know, I want you to be able to keep going. So I think if we take Laura's spectrum of that -10 and that 0 and that +10 and what you can do even for your writing, your day, how you break it up, how you schedule time for yourself, good idea, right? That where will that fit on that spectrum? And my goal would be that you have more things on that plus side, moving that. So,
Yes.
and for me, sometimes it's even just watching a movie. you know?
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, yeah.
so
Well, and you've touched on a bunch of things that right there, Judith, you may not realize you touched on a lot of the things that go into that are choices. I mean,
mhm,
you mentioned
mhm,
that writing is, you're alone a lot. And one of the biggest
mhm,
factors that goes into thriving and what the research shows is relationships and connection.
mhm,
So authors, especially because it's such a solo, kind of a practice, have to figure out some way to make sure they build into their lives connection with other human beings.
mhm.
That helps us thrive.
Well,
Um,
and I think one of the problems in our um, living evolution that we're all in, and the fact that this is great that we can do Zoom together, but it never oversells the one-on-one personal connection when people have that live connection. I remember one person, the husband actually of one of the authors who attended a gathering I do monthly, and he says, I'm not sure what in the heck you are doing over there, but every time she comes home, she's really all jacked up. What are you doing? And it's always about, writing, marketing. It's always about the publishing walk on that. But when you have other people around you who are walking, doesn't matter where they are on the walk, you absorb it.
yes.
Laura, you had do something that I'd love you to have it bring up. You have, because this is good part of your book that you're writing on Thrive, and
Yes.
you have a wheel that you have. I'd love to have that talks about positive emotions, and are your keys that you have to lead to all this. I'd love to have you share that. Right.
I,
So people, yeah. So everyone, you're what you're seeing here is just, this is something she has, and guess what? You can go get it for free. You can go get the whole handout if you go
mhm.
to the website, and that's the Center for Thriving Leadership.com.
and
Center.
and and actually, Judith, it's the Center for Thriving Leaders.
Oh
Sorry.
God, right. You see, I have sheeter is ship is always part of my deal. So Center for Thriving Leaders.com. And
Right.
you'll just see it right there. And you can download the entire it's a PDF array that goes into each of the 12 areas. So Laura, when you're looking at that, thinking about authors and writers, are any of them that really um, jump at you that are maybe more key? It's a bigger key, bigger door
Uh,
open. Uh,
that's a great question, Judith. That's an excellent question. And then I think it's a matter of, taking stock, kind of reflecting. And
mhm,
that's kind of what this tool does. I mean, it's
mhm,
a wheel. You go into, let me quick go. I don't know if they can see this, if anybody is watching, but there's a 0 in the center and a 10 at the edge. And so you can fill out, where do you think you are in terms of experiencing those positive emotions? Where do you think you are in terms of self-compassion, taking care of yourself, health and vitality? These are all the elements that kind of that research shows goes into
mhm.
living a thriving life. And so the first thing to do really would be to take stock and say, and these are all described in the handout. So what do we mean by growth mindset? What do we mean by meaning, mattering, and purpose? For authors, I'll go back to this because it's probably easier to see, although I probably need to make it bigger again.
Yep.
Um, yeah, let me see.
Big, expand, blow her up on that. But also I noticed where you had the 10 and 10, so the 10 would be you have 10 on the minus, up to 10 on the minus, and 10 on the plus. Did
Oh,
I read
yeah,
that right
that's
when I
part of
saw
it.
that?
Yeah, let
Okay,
me see where that is.
okay, just pull one of those.
Oh,
Okay, so there. So when you have that, actually, when we do this in your book, I
mhm,
would have
yes.
I would have 10 plus. I would do the plus 10
Ah,
and minus
okay,
10. So we
okay.
know where we're going. And then your little oh I would make that really a big bold circle for a 0. But
Excellent.
that's all. Actually, we're talking design as we go along here.
Okay. That's fine.
On how you express yourself and
Hmm.
all that. So, and each one of these elements, as I go around of it, for example, financial well-being. Well, publishing is not cheap, although
Mm.
we all have seen, oh yeah, I can publish your book for $297. Really? Really, really? We're going to get it designed. We're going to get the cover done. You're going to get outside editing done. No, you're not. So I'm just saying that it's all a lie. Um, but you need to know what your financial resources are to support this vision you have
Hmm.
on where you're going. And that's what's really important. I think I would so when you look around here, the accomplishments and achievement, it could be you finished a chapter. Well, I can tell you what I used to do when I do my game plan. I've done previous podcasts on it. When I finished a chapter, I got a bag of M&Ms. That was
I love that. Dangerous, but that's fun.
I just I gained 10 pounds on that book. But I think that what you need to do is what are your personal rewards as an author, as you're
Very good.
writing, whether it's
Mhm.
succeeding in an interview, whether it's nailing down a booking of a couple of podcasts to be on that, where it's tying into the learning thing. I'm going to go back to her GLAD issue. What have you learned today?
Mhm.
Um, on that is always essential. And it's interesting why I'm just thinking of that, Laura, that my protagonist in my historical fiction series, as a young girl, her papa would always ask her at that evening gathering meal, what did you learn today?
Ah, interesting.
I
See, you
just,
knew this all along.
I just, yeah.
Of course, you've
Okay.
lived your life that way, Judith.
So, but also, these other elements will all get do it. I mean, I love the engagement and the flow. That means you need to stay connected with other people.
Yes, you do. Yes.
Really important in the authoring because again, we both said authoring can be a lonely number. You
Hmm.
become so isolated and you need to hear, or that in talking with someone who had contacted me about working with her, and I said, you know what? We are not going to be a right fit. So, I'm going to wish you luck. I let her go. I'm going to
Mm.
wish you luck because you're not willing to have flexibility. You're seeing everything your way versus you're not including who you should be really writing for, which maybe if this is therapeutic for you, okay, we're fine. But if you're trying to write for other people in an audience, that you have to engage them in their methodology, in their jargon, in their thought process. And if you think that you're the only person in the writing world here, you're in for a rude awakening. And
Hmm.
it's always a challenge, when I have to have those kind of conversations. But um, you know, it's part of um the 12 keys.
It is. It is.
So we
Going back to
have
your
that.
question in terms of one other that stands out for authors that I would
Yes,
encourage everybody
yes.
who's listening to engage in, and that's the whole thing of self-compassion. If we're beating ourselves up all the time, um,
Mm-hmm.
you can't thrive. And taking care of ourselves, I mean, this goes to health and vitality, eating right, getting enough sleep, um, getting outside in the sunshine, maybe taking a walk, uh, you know, um, but self-care is really important as
Mm-hmm.
well, and both physically but also mentally. um, and again, that goes to that whole sense. I mean, sometimes we beat ourselves up, that we didn't get enough done, or that we could have done this differently, or whatever it is. Uh, and what we needed to do is remember, maybe we should talk to ourselves as we would talk to a friend, and give ourselves some grace, some self compassion.
Look, there isn't an author that I know of who will tell me their book is perfect in every way. Um, and the evolution that where Laura, you're starting on the book authoring journey now.
Yes. Hmm.
You know, I have always said I was a reluctant author, but I've been on it for 4 decades now.
Wow.
And that how I write now is significantly different than how I did. And that giving yourself a little break and not beating yourself, your self-compassion. I remember that I was rereading my first book. I had been invited to have it featured on Good Morning America. I am flying from San Francisco to New York, and I'm reading my book one more time, and I'm beating myself up.
Oh.
Why did you write it this way? Why, you could have written this better. Blah, blah,
Mm.
blah, blah.
Hmm. Yeah.
Instead of saying, hot spit, look at
Look
you,
where you're
first,
going.
first class. You're going to be at the Waldorf Astoria. Good Morning America's
That's such a great example. That is such a great example. Yes.
I learned, that, and it does change, and when we did it again, did I change the couple word? Yeah, I did.
Hmm.
But that's what you can do. So I do like that. So the 12 keys. So everyone, if this is something that might be helpful to you, I'm going to encourage you again to go hop over when we're off or write it down right now as we continue with Laura Belson. And the website, you can get the entire PDF with all the ins and outs of the wheel is through her website, the Center for Thriving Leaders.com. And leaders would be plural in this case. Okay, so Laura, let's come back. You have another a great phrase that I think we should dive into because I think that we can do it to ourselves. And that it come from maybe people that we have in our circle. It could be our family, it could be others, but it's a phrase called toxic positivity. What in the heck do you mean?
That's a great question. That is a great question. And so we're actually in the second wave of positive psychology. And in the first wave, the total focus, we got really carried away. This field was born, if you can imagine this, in 1998, there was a meeting of the American Psychological Association in San Francisco. And this, the big convention center, and there was like 7,000 psychologists in the room, if you can imagine such a thing. I mean, some were academics, some were practitioners, and this is how it was born. And there was so much excitement, and the total focus was, how can we help people be happy? How can
Mhm.
we how can we help them live the good life? And what the first wave kind of got a little bit of pushback because, yeah, I touched on it a little earlier. Toxic positivity is like forced optimism. It's that
Ah,
expectation that no matter what, we need to maintain a positive mindset, that we should feel
okay.
happy and optimistic, you know. And worse even is when we place that expectation on others and, and encourage them to ignore their, negative emotions,
Hmm.
um, or suppress them.
Mm.
Emotions are an interesting human phenomenon. They've been with us and have served us for tens of thousands of years. I mean, when the saber-toothed tiger wandered through caveman base camp and people felt fear, that was a good thing. It helped keep the species alive. We don't ignore emotions. We want to listen for what they're telling us, take in
Hmm.
that information, and use it to make choices.
Hmm.
If we lose a loved one, there's grief. We need to live that. And so positive psychology, you know, in the second wave says, what, it's not all about being happy all the time. That's not what this is. It's not about making people that cliche that says, this too shall pass or everything happens for a reason. That's the last thing somebody wants to hear when they've lost a loved one. Instead, what we would rather do is say, this has got to be a really tough time for you. I'm here for you.
Hmm.
So acknowledging the the fact that there are negative emotions, and then being intentional about what we choose to put our focus on. One of the researchers in this field, Sonia Lubomirsky, has written a wonderful book, and in it, based on her research at Claremont University, I think she is, um, she found that about half of our emotions, half of what we choose to put about half of how happy we are is kind of, there's a set point. We all have a set point, and some of it comes from our family of origin, some of it comes from a variety of places. But about half of our happiness is, just who we are. Um, about 10% is our circumstances. So yeah, we may want to get that vacation place in, Mexico, or take that wonderful vacation, or get that new car or something like that. And what the research shows is that after people have it,
Yeah.
that happiness goes, and they're ecstatic, for a while, but the happiness goes back to the set point. We get used to having that nice new car, or we get used to having a vacation place, or taking that big vacation. But a full 40% is really where we just choose to put our focus, what we choose to put our focus
Mm.
on. And, we need to take in the information about our negative emotions so that we can make course correction. Am I feeling frustrated by something right now? Let me examine that. Or angry with someone for something they did. Let's examine that and put some focus there so that we can make some course corrections in how we're living. Do I need to give voice to my frustration? Do I need to give voice to my anger? How is the
Hmm.
best way to do that?
Hmm.
And so toxic positivity dismisses all that. That says, nope, nope, we're not going to focus at all on the loss or the grief or the anger or the frustration. Put a happy face on it. Don't worry, be happy, that kind of.
So you're going to put blinders on,
Yes.
and be
Yes, exactly.
oblivious.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, oblivious to all the other noise that's actually maybe screaming at you.
Exactly. Because you can't fix it if you ignore it. And those emotions don't go away. They're still there. I mean,
Mhm.
you could, try to repress them, but they're still there.
Mhm.
And, if you ignore them long enough, you're going to end up in that negative, that minus end of the spectrum, and
Mm.
needing a different kind of therapeutic help.
Uh-oh.
Well,
Or making choices. I mean, this is
exactly.
where the choice factor comes in. Of
Exactly.
what where do you want to be? What do you want to surround you with? Um, it always amazes me. There's just a book that I'm going to be doing a moderation with the author on, and asking her questions and stuff. And it's written. She has a gift with words. I mean, the phrasing, it's really chewy, it's delicious, it's all this.
Love it.
That I woke up in the middle, I couldn't sleep, so I thought, okay, I'm going to finish the book. And going in, and it turns out it's based on a real situation of several hundred years ago. Okay,
Mm.
so because I was familiar with the territory, and I'm thinking, I don't remember any news about this." Well, it was several hundred years ago. All right, so that's why it's not in my radar, so to
Yeah.
speak. And so I, okay, so don't beat yourself up on that one. But then going in, and there was a key phrase that, like, almost like an Easter egg. Um, the key figure reveals to the reader that she's never been known for her choices, making good choices. And
Wow.
as I'm plowing through this book, I'm going, I've got, I'm not the Friday the 13th horror person. I don't like those kind of movies, but there's always, the classic thing where these, ding dong teenagers decide to go and run into the dark garage because they want to get away from it. And of course, the boogeyman is in there.
Mm.
And you're going, oh my God, don't go in there. Please don't. And I'm reading this along and I'm thinking, why would you possibly go in that direction? That's what I, I almost found it exhausting. Truly you must have a good choice.
You want to reach into that book and shake that person.
Yes, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. And I think that was the intent of the author.
Interesting.
And knowing that, but I when I finished and closed the last page, I was wanting because, yes, she's gonna take care of this child called that is birthing called, she's referred to all during pregnancy as Bean, as she talks to it. But that I kept thinking, so what's next? Because of all the horrible choices she's made from the get-go, I'm thinking, what's going to happen here?
Mm.
So, but so that
Interesting.
positive, the happyology, as you call it, I
Yes.
think sometimes if it's not so happy, I think it's important for you to acknowledge that.
That's exactly right, Judith. Exactly right. We need to acknowledge it. We need to listen to it so that we can do some course corrections if we need to.
Well,
Yeah.
that's the big, now you're into psychology again. So is the course correction going to make other people happy
Yeah,
because
those are
of,
questions.
of, of your redirect?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I don't know the answer to that. You need to help me.
Well, we'll be chatting. You are helping me tremendously.
All right. So, as we're marching, we're getting marching toward what we're doing. We have about 10 minutes to go. But as you're getting to know the author community, the writer community, on that, based on your experience and your 12 pillars that you have, and we did talk about a few that would be there. What would be some of the other things that you would advise for authors to keep it together, to keep it going, to be
Uh,
open to new stuff?
well, there's certainly growth mindset, but one of the ones I think I'd like to
Mm.
touch on is
Mm.
resilience. I
Oh,
mean,
yes, I love that word.
and authors need it for sure. Just to
Um,
keep going with the writing sometimes, to
uh-huh.
be resilient in the face of some of the reviews that might be coming their way or the
Oh,
rejections
yeah.
that might
Yep.
be coming their way. And the thing about resilience is it is also something that is a choice. It is something that can be cultivated, that we can learn, and we build it. You must build it before you need it. Um,
So it's in your toolkit.
it kind of all of these things kind of do lead to
Uh-huh.
resilience. And resilience is often referred to as bouncing back. And if you think about resilience like a ball, um, it rarely bounces back to exactly where it was.
Hmm.
And we have some control over how we bounce that ball, and we can bounce it forward, or we can bounce it to the side and move around an obstacle, or there is some, again, there's an intentionality with this as well. And some people bounce back higher than they were before. They hit at some kind of adversity, they don't necessarily bounce back to where they were, they bounce back to even better, because then
Hmm.
it's actually called post-traumatic growth. And we see that.
Oh, I
Yeah.
have never heard that phrase before. So wait a sec.
Yeah.
Post-traumatic. Okay. So
Post-traumatic
that's
growth.
coming out of something that has been really a mess, really
Yeah.
traumatic, but all of a sudden you go into another
Yes.
direction. Or is that kind of like Laura, turning lemons into lemonade? Would that be kind of
Kind
that
of.
kind of
Yes,
mentality
exactly. Yeah.
thinking?
Yeah, it is. But some people do it with their entire lives. I mean, Judith,
Uh-huh.
you kind of exemplify this. you had a lot of adversity early on.
Yep.
Um, and, you've gone on to do amazing things as a result. You know, so, but we can prepare ourselves because,
Hmm.
again, we acknowledge that adversity will step into our lives. I mean, it enters into all of our lives. None of us are going to last forever, for one thing. Health issues can come up, loved one issues, relationship issues, financial issues, all kinds of things. And resilience is a skill, and it's built through consistent practice. Um,
Hmm.
and also through preparation. I mean, if you think about, let's say you're going to raft down a river, and there's going to be periods of calm water,
Oh, yeah.
and there's going to be
And
periods of rapids.
whoa. And
And
sometimes you get thrown out of the canoe
yes,
or the
yep,
kayak,
or
or
yep,
since I have done both.
there you go. And so, we can take a moment and study those rapids. We can take a moment
Hmm.
and say, what kind of kayak should I be having here? Should I wear a life vest? Should I, navigate this side or this side of the river? And, so there are some mindset skills that go into building our resistance. There's some lifestyle and physical health skills that we can, and then social and behavioral. So it all kind of comes together in this wheel. I mean, I love this field. I
I
mean,
get into.
mindset, embracing change, um, acknowledging that, the one thing constant in life is change. And, it's never going to stand still. And so we need to get used to the fact that we're going to have to deal with change and
And
adversity.
sometimes you're not going to like it,
And so,
but
exactly. Yeah.
it's here. Yeah, I'm so resilience is a powerful word, and it just brings back, I know we're very close to wrapping here, but that I've mentioned this book many times before to my listeners, and it's Mastery by George Lenner. It was required reading when I worked on my master's many years ago
Mm.
in our organizational development module. And the Spencer Johnson said, he was our prof, and he said, you all have to read this. Turned out to be the favorite book of all of us.
Wow.
And it talks about the power of plateauing, the power of plateauing, of learning something over and over and tweak it and twist it and then stepping out and the world explodes for you because
Mm.
you know it, you've come through it, the resilience that you've mastered whatever it is,
Hmm.
and all that. And I think that's I can't recommend the book high enough. It's one of those little gems, by the way,
Mm.
that and getting that through for all of you. So, with that said, Dr. Laura Biltz, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you, Dr.
As
Judith Briles. Thank you for
there,
everything you
there we
do.
go, Doctor. All right, so um, but I do encourage all of you to hop over to her website and grab the full blown wheel and take advantage of it and study it learning. So that the Center for Thriving Leaders.com, and do that. And we'll have Laura back again because she has her own journey she's going on, but it's all about thriving. And that's what we do as authors. We're resilient and we thrive. We'll see you next week.